In this class, we keep our discussion on the topic of learning and training at work. We will start to discuss on what are training, developments, and education, and then will be followed by the explanation of the training and development process. So let's start to discuss on the differences between or among training, development, and education. So what are they? First, for education. For education, it is defined as the activities which aim at developing the knowledge, skills, moral values, and understanding required in all aspects of life, rather than a knowledge skill related to only a limited field of activity. In other words, education is broad and generic. It is usually intended to mean basic instructions in knowledge and skills designed to help people make the most of life in general. It is therefore personal and broadly based. And the example of education is language. For example, if you learn English, which is your language, and then it is for the master of your language skills is not just knowledge. It influence or have impacts of your life. And next topic is training. Training is different from education. As I said, education is broad, but for training, it is planned and systematic modification of behavior through learning events, programs, and instruction, which enable individuals to achieve the level of knowledge, skills, and competence to carry out their work effectively. So the difference between training and education is, for training, it is work-specific or task-specific. But for education, it is the knowledge or skills or even moral values that influence your whole life. One example is the language, as I said. Another example is, say, mathematics. You learn mathematics because you need to understand how to make your calculations, how to process your payments, even in your daily life. So, like languages and mathematics are learned through the education, say, for example, in school. But for training, it is a bit different because it helps or it enables individuals to achieve the level of knowledge, skills, and competence to carry out specific tasks or work. And next terminology here is development. For development, it is the growth or realization of a person's ability and potential through conscious or unconscious learning and educational experiences. So the development therefore takes a broader view of the acquisition of skills and knowledge than training. If we talk about training is task or work specific, then development concerned more with changes in attitude, behavior, and potential than with immediate skills, like what we described in training. And for development, it relates more to helping the growth of the individual for future roles. Sometimes we argue for development here. For development, it is more general, more future-oriented, and more individually oriented than training. So let's summarize on three different terminologies here. First, education. Education is usually intended to mean basic instruction in knowledge and skills designed to help people make the most of life in general. It is therefore personal and broadly based. Example is languages, and the quality of education can therefore only be completely assessed when the learner moves on to future jobs or tasks. In school, You have your language test or even language exam, because you need to be assessed in order for you to meet certain standard. After your completion of your education, then you need to meet some standard, which means that the other one knows what's your level of, or what's your skills on particular subjects like languages. For training therefore usually implies a planned process to modify attitudes, skills, or behavior that will help the individual to improve their performance in their job. So for training, it is job-oriented rather than personal. So it's task or work specific, as I said, and training can be evaluated upon the learner's return to work. So by observation through the daily work, the immediate supervisor can assess whether the staff after the training can be performed or not performed. And next, development. Development therefore takes a broader view of the acquisition of skills and knowledge than training. So the key here is broader view, and it concerns more with changes in attitude, behavior, and potential than with immediate skills. And for development, it relates to more to helping the growth of the individual for future roles. As said, it is more general for development as compared to training, and it is more future-oriented and more individually oriented than training. So in summary, development is more general than training, and it is more forward-looking and oriented towards the individual, and is concerned with enabling the individual to fulfill their potential. So here in this part, we explain the differences among three terms: training, development, and education. And for the course here, we focus on development and training. Because for education, as said, it is not very job-oriented. The education influences all aspects of your life. So sometimes we cannot say it is job-specific or job-oriented. So our focus here will be on training and development. So next topic is about training and development process. For training and development process, we can divide it into 4 different stages. So namely, identification of training needs. So first of all, you have to identify the needs of about training, and next, once you identify the training needs, you need to set the objectives for training, and then you design the training program, and deliver to your participants. After that, you need to evaluate and validate the training program. So let's move on to discuss on these 4 stages one by one. The stage 1 is identification of training needs. We have a number of possible methods to identify the needs. So it's not only one method. We have about 4 different or possible methods to identify the needs. First, formal training needs analysis, or formal TNA, which is TNA stands for training needs analysis. Next is performance appraisal, and then observation. And the final method here we mentioned is about organizational strategy. So let's move on to discuss on 4 different methods one by one. The first one is formal training needs analysis, or TNA. For TNA, it involves identification of the skills, knowledge, and experience needed for a particular job, and comparing this to the skills, knowledge, and experience of the current job holder. So for example, here is a chart or table. On the left hand side is about the requirement or the need on the role. For example, you need to have a good communication skills, you need to understand about the product knowledge, and say with 5-year experiences. So here are the requirements or needs for a particular job that you expect the individuals can meet in order to perform. And next is the current job holder, to see whether they are able to perform with their background and experiences. The job holder, say with good communication skills, but very minimal product knowledge and just fair experience, say 4 years experience, but maybe not relevant to the job, then you need to think whether this person is suitable. If yes, is suitable, then whether you need to provide additional training for this person, in order to meet the requirements on this job or this role. So first is about the formal training needs analysis. You have to put the needs of this particular role, and also you need to put what you can find on the job or the current job holder. So if the job holder is lacking any of these required skills, this is referred to as a learning gap, which can be filled using training. So as I mentioned here, you put your needs here and put what you got from the job holder here. Then you make the comparison. You highlight any variances between these two categories or 2 columns. And next is you identify the learning gap. You need to provide training to this particular person in order for him or her to perform. So here is the first method to identify the training needs. And the next method is performance appraisal. Most line managers appraise their staff or carry out a performance review at least annually. And during this, the manager can review past performance, discuss the employee's aspirations, and use this to identify possible training and development opportunities in the future. In other words, under the performance appraisal, if it is fair appraisal, the line managers should make an objective appraisal on the subordinates or the staff, that whether he or she can perform and whether they meet the needs of the role. So it's quite similar to TNA, but it is a regular process for performance appraisal. For TNA, sometimes it is not a regular process. We will discuss about later about the organizational strategy. Then for organizational strategy, sometimes we need to have the TNA, but for performance appraisal, I can say that it is a regular TNA, because you have to put the needs of this particular role, and then you identify what you got from your current job holder, whether they can fill all the requirements. So if there's a gap, or the individual cannot meet all of the requirements, then it provides the room for training for him. But for performance appraisal, one thing is the employee aspiration. It should be considered, not just like TNA. So on top of TNA, for performance appraisal, the immediate manager or line manager need to listen about what the employees needs and what about the employees' aspirations. And next, observation. There may be signs that staff require additional training, such as poor productivity or high number of mistakes. And there is evidence that adequate training leads to workers failing to meet production targets, leading to frustration. So by observation, you have the labor productivity report showing whether the labor turnover rate is high, whether a lot of them are absent in the production factory or in the organization. So all these numbers like turnover and absence and the number of days of absence can show whether your team or your staff are productive. If it is high absence rate, if it is high turnover rate, the story behind the numbers should be investigated and asked why. And once you find the problems, you need to solve it. So it's about the observation to identify whether there's a training need behind the numbers. Last but not the least, it's about organizational strategy. Training and development must be linked to the overall business strategy, and there should be senior support for the training program, and it must be seen to support the needs of the organization itself. And training cannot be considered as waste of time and money, because from the organizational strategy point of view, your business should grow, and your business or your organization should be able to cope with or to deal with any changes in the business environment. And if no proper training and development for your staff, how can the organization move forward in a dynamic world or dynamic business environment? And under organizational strategy, sometimes because of changes in the, say for example, like legislation, then you need to do the formal TNA again, because once a change in the legislation or the regulations, some of the requirements affected in your industry, then you need to identify again what are the gaps between the role expected and your current job holder. So after identifying the training needs through different methods, no matter you choose only one method or all four methods you applied in your organization, the next step is setting objectives for training. And in this stage, it examines what the proposed training program is supposed to accomplish. Say, what impacts do we want it to have on our staff? And for objectives, it needs to be clearly stated, measurable, and specific, outlining the effects that training would have on the performance and abilities of the employee being trained. So in other words, a specific, measurable, and attainable objective is a must for an effective training. And you can measure the effectiveness of the training afterwards, because you state what you want to achieve in your objectives and what are the measurable KPI, for example, after a particular training. You put it on before the training, and then you can measure it to see whether it is effective to deliver what you expect or what you would like to be. The third stage is program design and delivery. There are different types of training programs for individuals, such as formal training courses, mentoring, coaching, computer-based learning, and self-managed training. For formal training courses, it is easy to be understood because right now, for example, you are participate in formal training courses for your exam. And for mentoring and coaching, they are not the same. For mentoring, it's mainly for the new joiners because they don't know about the culture, about the workflow of an organization, then they need to be mentored by this experienced staff in order to know about the culture and the workflow of an organization. It's not about technical skills. It's not about the knowledge, because once you hire a person, then their qualifications should meet the standard. But the problem is whether they can be part of the organization. Then the step is to have a good mentor in order to guide him or her in the organization. For coaching, it's not the same, because it's sometimes referred to a more senior persons to be coached. They need direction. They need to be inspired, and under these such situations, a good coach can help. Say, for example, the executive directors or executive members need to be coached on how to move forward, especially to set the direction for the organization, and how they can deliver the message to the staff or to their subordinates, to other team members. The coach can help to do it. And for computer-based learning and self-managed training, it is self-explanatory by the words. And apart from that, there are various methods to conduct the training program, such as lectures, discussions, business games, case studies, and role play. All these here, like lectures and discussion, are the group learning activities. And for like formal training courses, computer-based learning, mentoring, coaching, all these items are for individuals' training and development. And the organization must decide whether to implement the training externally or in-house. If in-house is chosen, infrastructure and staffing must be carefully considered. So one weakness of in-house training and development is about the cost. Not many companies can afford it. Like you have to build your in-house team, or even you have the training room or training facilities to cope with it. So you have to build the infrastructure and a well-trained staff in order to proceed or to move forward on the in-house training. It is possible for the large corporation, but not for all companies in the world. And the final stage here we mentioned is evaluation and validation of the training program. And once completed training, evaluation of the program aims to assess whether it was successful and whether the training achieved its objectives. It will also enable the organization to ensure that it is using the right tools for training. So, at the final stage here, you need to evaluate whether the training is effective, whether the training can achieve your goal. And there are some evaluation tools here we will mention. Or there are 5 levels of evaluation. First, reactions. Second, learning. Third, job behavior. Fourth, organization. And fifth, ultimate value. So there are 5 levels of evaluation after the training. You can just remember whether it is on the reaction stage or learning stage, job behavior stage, or at more high level like organization and ultimate values level. So here is chart showing what are the tools and what are the expected outcome. Like for reactions, examples are end of course questionnaires to see whether the participants enjoy the training, whether there are feelings about the training, whether they enjoyed it. So feelings is important here. Questionnaires can help to have immediate feedback from the participants. And next is learning. So say for example, what new skills and knowledge have been acquired or what changes in attitude after the learning. So it's quite straightforward and can be observed. And you can ask your students to participate in attainment tests. It limits to the immediate knowledge and skills improvement and may not indicate whether the learning will be transferred to the workplace or job. So after the learning, the participants complete their test and they meet some standards, but you don't know whether they can apply in their job. And also you can perform interviews for individuals. So for them, they can have a chance to discuss whether the learning progress is on good track and what will be the next step after learning. The third level here is job behavior, and at this level, it tries to measure the extent to which trainees have applied their training on the job. So you can observe, like observation here, you can observe their job performance, whether they can deliver or they can demonstrate their new skills learned from the training, and whether their job performance improved. And also for career development, like if their job behavior is on good track and the individual can be promoted even faster than others because they can learn and apply in their job, and it shows the effectiveness of the training to that particular individual. And next is organization. And training may be assessed in terms of the ways in which changes in job behavior affect the functioning of an organization. What does it mean? It means that when a group of people are trained and assessed, their job behavior change, and then finally it will turn to the organization because the individual job behavior change. If it is a positive change, then the whole organization culture and behavior will also be changed positively. Then you can see whether it can achieve the group target or the department target. Say, for example, like sales department, they have the target to increase sales by 20%. And in the past, the sales team are unhappy with the team and with the customer and with many other people as well. But after training, they improve their attitude. They work well with each other. They are smiling more than before. And maybe the sales improved as well. So you can see if the team improve their job behavior, finally it can help to improve the company target as well. And at the top of the chart here is ultimate value. This is a measure of the training in terms of how the organization as a whole has benefit. So it can be measured in terms of greater profitability, survival, or growth. So here are 5 levels for evaluation and validation of the training program. And whatever evaluation method is used, it should be done before, during, and after the event. So let's have a brief of what should be done before, during, and after the training or development event. First, before the event. Before the event, the organizations should clarify the existing skills, knowledge, and attitudes to help the trainer plan the event and provide a yardstick by which to measure them. So in other words, before the training happens, the trainer needs to identify the gaps that they need to fill in, the training gaps that they need to fill in. So after the training, it can be measured whether they achieve it or not achieve it. And during the training event, no matter trainer or the organization will identify the rate of learning, allowing the trainer to pace the learning to suit the trainee and offer remedial help where needed. So during the training, the trainer needs to observe the progress of the training to see whether there is a fall short behind of the target or meet the target or even faster than the target. And they need to adjust if needed. And after the training event, it can be immediately after training or over a long time, and it should be linked back to the objectives of the training and check whether they have been accomplished. So after the training, as I said, you identify the gap, the learning gap in the before the training event. Then after the event, you should assess whether the participants here can achieve the target set for them or the objective set for them. So here is one question for you to review whether you understand this topic here. The question is, consider the following statements. First statement: decisions about training are only ever made after a formal training needs analysis. So here the key is whether it is really only. Second, training should be delegated to external providers if the organization lacks the skills or infrastructure in-house. So which of these statements is or are correct? Whether the first statement only, second statement only, or both statements are correct, or neither one of correct. If you remember, we explained the 4 stages, and for stage 1, it is about identification of training needs, formal training needs analysis (TNA), performance appraisal, observation, and organizational strategy. So there are 4 methods, and either one of them or 4 of them can be applied to identify the needs. So after sharing with or recap this chart, I do believe you can choose the correct answer from this question.